Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Tyler Edlin, professional artist and illustrator, and today we're going to be doing a painting demo of painting a Japanese fortress in the Misty Mountain. This is one of my favorite subjects. I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing as I go, and if you stick around to the end, I'm going to do something a little special. Alright, so let's begin. Alright guys, so we're going to start today with this base from a student in my architecture class from this term, Alexi Leo. This is just an awesome sort of place to start. They had asked a question in our live classroom chat about how about going to paint this, and that's what I'm going to show you fine folks here today. So this was actually recorded kind of right from class itself, and you're going to notice something right off the bat with this, and I want to make this one of the major points of this video, is that I paint literally just with light. I try to treat the marks that I make, the strokes that I convey, as all lighting. So when I'm painting these two separate areas, right, these shapes right now, I'm not thinking literally that this is a rock, this is a mountain, this is going to be a fortress. I'm thinking a little more simple than that this is light coming into this crevice, any crevice, it could be anything, and I just need to separate the major components so that they're readable. And I'm initially doing that with color temperature. Some people prefer to do that with values. I love values, but I'm a color guy through and through, that is for sure. So I'm trying to feel my way through these earlier steps by expression, through how I'm just feeling about what this color could be. Because like, we could have taken that drawing there from Alexi and we could have lit it at any angle. We could have set the mood and the tone any sort of way. I didn't have restrictions on that. It was entirely open. So I was like, you know, in the moment, like, how do I want to paint this? I'm feeling relaxed, and I love the tranquility of this setting. So what I'm trying to do is push that in these colors. And for me at this painting, I'm basically trying to treat this as like, it's a little bit of a game in itself, that I'm trying to communicate as much as I can, not in like necessarily as little time as possible, though I'm always under some kind of time restraint, but in this case I'm trying to just convey that idea of that feeling in the mood of the scene, the essence of the scene, if you want to think of it that way, with very few brush strokes. So that's why if I just make a selection, fill it with one big airbrush, or if I have a ground or terrain here and I take one brush and just lay it down with one squiggle, I'm literally just trying to get down all these big pieces. The sky wedge, mountain wedge, back canyon wedge, but it's all done with relatively few marks. This isn't something that I necessarily recommend a student to always do and to be cautious of, but like, I do recommend you to try to be thoughtful, because it took me, right, like 12, 13 years of doing this, making very thoughtful marks, not just rushing against the clock for the sake of it, but really literally slowing down and thinking about, if I make this shape, this color, and this, you know, value, what will that show? What will that communicate? And just kind of thinking on a, I'm not going to say a higher level, but thinking at a basic level, kind of like that. See, like here, it's not like, oh, these are trees and they're against the rock and they're covered in, I'm not, no. It's like, this is a shape of green, and as a symbol, it will be a stand-in for trees. Like, people could just, on a very abstract level, if I never detailed this further, right, like the average person could probably look at that and be like, is that trees? You know, and just kind of put that in with their own imagination. And that's one of my favorite ways to use light, right, when I'm painting a scene like this, is to let the viewer's imagination kind of come in. I say this a lot, so I don't have to paint every detail. I don't have to paint every tree. I don't have to paint every crock, every rock, little blemish and imperfection and chip. You know, it's just going to use big marks, you know, broad strokes to kind of show that without really zooming in. And I probably will not zoom in once throughout the duration of this painting. I think from the drawing phase up to like this whole color demo, I think I did an hour of it for class, and then I might have put in another hour, hour and a half or so. It was under 3 hours total for the time, but like I think that, and that's a testament to the drawing, right? That was laid out, before me. I think from Alexi, it's an absolute fabulous drawing. It figures out all the perspective. It figures out the composition, figures out the design language of this structure, and that's stuff that you have to figure out early on. Because if I were trying to figure that out at this stage, it would be a mess. It'd be really difficult. So see here, I was like, this is getting too many shapes. So this is what I'll often do. I just grab the airbrush, the basic circle soft brush in Photoshop, and just literally start dumping light on it. I'm like, over here is going to be a little darker, so we'll go down in value. This side's going to be a little cooler. That side's going to be a little warmer. And I'm just covering up a lot of the marks and a lot of the brush strokes, because it wasn't getting necessarily busy, but I'm always trying to reduce it to its fewest components so that I can, again, reveal the most important aspects very selectively, right? Like, let's say the shape of, or the silhouette rather, of this building, and that's what we teach in, week 1 and particularly week 2 of the class, is the importance of those shapes, the readability, and of course, how clear they are. And that's always what I'm bringing this back to on a painting like this. So see, like with very little marks, I'm just constantly simplifying this. We could still see that this is a castle in a mountain surrounded by lush vegetation, and it's getting hit with that right kind of light that just makes it inviting and a little serene. Well, this is a little more dark and a little more atmospheric at this point, but you'll see once we add that light in there. This scene right at this stage has no real direct light. It's like we're on set, or we have like the biggest massive fog machine ever, and we're just pumping this thing full of atmosphere, and we don't really have any strong direct light piercing this structure yet, hitting it. But we're going to do that. We're going to do that really soon. And once we actually apply that direct light to all of this softer, this is very soft lighting, right? Soft lighting I like to call ambient light, for those that didn't know. And it's a very generalized way of painting things. So we're not getting too dark. We're not getting too light, right? Think mid-tones. And then we're going to put that light in. So here's a little trick. How I like to paint clouds. Nothing simple, nothing fancy. I take the airbrush and go whoosh, whoosh, right? Like that's 2 or 3 brush strokes. I didn't actually count. And then I just erase it. I erase into it with the cloud brush. So I don't paint the clouds with the cloud brush. I just use it as an eraser on the airbrush. That's a pro trick hack right there, because I'll find 9 out of 10 students that will paint clouds with the cloud brush. It's overworked, it's overdone. You can see the cloud brush stamped in 9 times over, and it always looks not terrible, but like if you make enough digital paintings, you could start to see that artifacting, like those digital traces, and so that is exactly why I do it the opposite way. And then of course I'm smudging it, I'm erasing it, I'm tugging it. But I'm not painting it. I'm not using actual brush strokes. I'm just manipulating the pixels, in this case, that is here. All right, I'm back. I had to change. This is recording on the next day. Sorry for that. And yeah, I'm really just finessing these clouds. And in some cases, I'll try to take the shortest method of resistance with this. And that is like if I got an okay looking shape, that I painted like this cloud, which is just a simple brush stroke on that one layer, I duplicate that and then see if any aspect is reusable, in a way that if I kind of slightly change the context of it by changing either see like how dark or light it is to layer it, or just doing a warp or a skew, some options in Photoshop that allows me to change that shape of it by modifying it slightly is a great way to do it. And then, right, again, just erasing, that's what I'm doing here with more of like these cloud-like brushes, but it works really good. If I wanted to, maybe toward the end, I could go back and add like 1 or 2 little wisps in there, like in the light side, if I wanted to add more detail to them. But this is one of those things that I don't really think this type of image will necessarily benefit. So at this point, what I'm doing is I'm making a new layer, and I've got like a weird kind of grungy brush, and I'm just implying, again, rather than painting directly, some of this forest foliage that's getting hit by direct light. So I just have to kind of choose a color that's lighter, brighter, and probably warmer. Those are the three categories I'm looking for to contrast something that's getting hit with direct light versus shadow. And I'm just finding the nice little line or that shape that I can use to help frame this, primary castle or tower, whatever that may be. So here I think just having that nice horizontal line for this behind it, and I'm gonna go a little taller than it. And as you can see, it's a mix of like a weird couple like leafy brushes or brushes with scatter in combination with a smudge tool or two is a great way. Now, just to switch gears off, because I know I want to probably light that base with light as well, I'm just simply, again, compared to what was there, choosing a color that's lighter, a little closer to, white without going pure white, and then getting a little bit of texture in there. Adding texture, or the clearest aspects of texture where this light is hitting, I think is definitely a huge part of capturing light the right way. That way I'm simplifying areas of the shadow, and by contrast, again, I'm really specifically chiseling out shapes of light. So it's simple versus complex. Here I'm just making a selection, using like the lasso tool, and bumping up an uneven amount of that light scattering, that direct light scattering, to hit the bridge. So I feel it adds, that unevenness of it adds a nice little bit of natural light to hit it, because like, okay, maybe over here it's a little darker, maybe over here it's like maybe a cloud's moving, that I'm trying to think of, not like, and here's another major tip with this, not just what factors are immediately in this frame, right, in the frame of the picture, but what external factors are happening outside it. So yeah, there's going to be cliffs, there might be trees swaying, on them, and of course there's clouds moving around, and all these things would add lack of better words here, dappled lighting, not so much in the sense that it's coming through a forest, but through the clouds. I can make that light uneven, and that unevenness, even though I really didn't get into the texture of that yet, maybe I do, maybe I won't in this, but I know it needs it. So here it's more of like a time thing. But that unevenness of that light hitting that from the density of the clouds and how they're separating, I think adds to the interest of it without me, let's say, necessarily having to work too hard for it. Now, because of how much light I kept dropping in over this particular area back there to push the background back, and I bring some of that back, but like the first thing I want to bring back here is adding some really nice contrast to this gate leading up to it, right? Because currently that direct light with that direct shadow, or just that shadow, that'll add the full range of value on there, which should help bring it a little closer into focus. Now, the original design had some cool little tunnel thing going, in and out of the castle. I'm for that at this point. It's cool. I'm not going to go and change anything like that. But I also had forgot, or I was waiting till maybe like a little bit later, like this here. I'm taking the same kind of green and adding some of that scattered light, just kind of hitting at the edge of that bridge, because like the area to the right of this now, that's all in shadow. It's probably going down in grade, so it's probably going to avoid most types of light, and that light's going to flicker sorry, cough again, through the support beams of that bridge. And now again, I'm just adding some of that direct light, starting to really hit some of like the tinier details and the broader shapes as well on that roof. And it starts to really, right, like as I said earlier, it starts to bring the picture up quite a bit when we have implied detail in the shadow, implied brushwork in the shadow, just implied shadows where I'm not focusing on anything too deliberate, and then focusing on those clearer, smaller shapes, tinier brush strokes, and focusing on the material of what that light is hitting. Now, one little mistake that I'm not taking the time on a quicker image like this to fix is that I'm drawing these lines, see like the frame around some of the architecture. I'm doing this right now, doing that really straight and even. An older material like that is going to have a lot more little like deviations in it, divots, wear and tear. I'm just not factoring that in for this particular image. It's not going to break or make an image like this anyway, but it's something to consider if you're, building like a portfolio piece and want, better details and more accuracy. You break up that line a little. Of course, if you're doing something more stylized, choosing to keep it a little simpler, will probably work in your favor. Now, I'm at this stage kind of tired of just looking at the backgrounds really, that are that simple. So I'm picking some greens. These greens are, very mid-tone. You can kind of see it on the color selector there. And I'm going to try to get the, some details into these mountains, which are kind of really close to what you see in, of course, like Japan and parts of China. So I'm trying to do like those, and they were in the original drawing as well. But I referenced those a little bit, but I want to push. This part wasn't referenced in the drawing as like that lighting kind of coming through that crack in the rocks, and just hitting the tops around some of these. So I'm again faking the illusion of depth by doing that, and I'm implying that light has this agency to it where it's really just very physically active in the scene. And a lot of like student paintings tend to they won't have it, maybe they won't think of it, but they won't have light implying form to help communicate like flow and things like that. So I'm trying to add that in without overworking it. And then, as you can see, I'm kind of going back over on this stage to kind of figure out some of the shadow tones. Now it's sticking out like a little bit too much now, but you'll see on a layer right after this, I'll chisel out, hopefully without overworking it, some actual formed shapes in those rocks. So it right now it looks like that foliage is floating right on that surface. We're gonna fix that, but again, I'm trying to find the patterns and the shapes and how, because like this green is the color that sticks out right in this image. Everything else is very neutral, very warm. And the green is kind of like the color that's separate from that. It's the accent color here, and I'm using that accent to drive the viewer's attention and to push it toward our focal element. So it's very deliberate measures, and it's very easy in this situation that maybe I could work that too far. Now, if all the mountains, it was just green, 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 and green, it would kind of be the opposite, where the image is green and the castle is red, so the castle kind of sticks out. But I don't want these. Green and red are really good complementary colors, and my goal is to kind of harmonize them within a palette here, and that could be different. That could be really difficult, like, because if you just stick like a real good straight red against a very vivid green like this, it is really difficult to kind of get them to work and to sit well in that same scene. So I am trying to do that. Here I have like an ink brush. It's kind of really basic. It's a popular type of brush. You see these a lot. But what I'm doing here is start to find the ebbs and the flows of what these rock forms will be doing. So I'm coming in here. These are neutrals, and they look very vivid and colorful there because I have such subtleties in my grays that as soon as I step foot out of that immediate gray field of these neutral colors, the colors just really kind of pop. And so this is kind of a method where, like, I might start to really push away from the accuracy or the literacy of like what realistic lighting would look like, on a scenario like this, and really just push for like a higher chroma type of image where I'm going to use a lower range of values. So I'm not going to go to the extremes of light and dark. Well, yeah, I'll have lighter colors, but I'll probably stay away from some of the darker darks that I typically would go for, and push for the color variety and push for the color relationships as an emphasis over the value relationships, which it's very difficult to do because you have to be really comfortable with color, you have to be familiar with, and you'll have to know how to really manipulate color very well. So it's slightly more advanced in that way, whereas students have to first really learn and practice value fully, get value relationships to work. But like that's the real big first step to get, and a more subtle, advanced way to do it. And again, it's not really realistic, but it looks really good on not necessarily like surreal type paintings, but more impressionistic like ones. Kind of what this is. Since I'm not really zooming in, I'm not focused on details. It's a quicker demo, so I'm just trying to imply and kind of let the brush strokes do their thing. So having a little bit of a higher chroma image. This is still very middle of the road, but in some of those light areas, I am trying to push the overall saturation and very much limit the value range, which is, according to like the definitions as I understand it, a slightly higher chroma based image. So see here, I'm using which is like a very it's a grunge brush. I make it very large, stamp it in to like the rock face, and then essentially I'm smudging and erasing into that. And again, it's just implying rock. I'm not trying to like really get in there and chisel out, waste any time that I possibly could getting into the actual complexities of what those rock faces look like. And I'm letting the randomness of that controlled brushstroke let it do the thinking for me, because if I overthink it, I'll just make very rigid, stiff patterns of rock that I always make, and I'm trying to avoid it because it's rock and it's natural, and it has to just feel very organic. And the way I paint things, just by muscle memory and my own visual memory, is like I'm gonna make a pattern or something really stiff about it. So yeah, I'm adding a little more green. I did change my mind, and I want a little more lushness brought in. So I'm playing with fire technically here, seeing how much I can get away with, and if I can certainly make it not impact, the quality of the scene. But I like how it is, because I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to bring more clouds and light over that. But this is serving as some of these underlayers for that light that I'll eventually kind of bring in. Here I'm kind of tweaking things. I am nudging the values around. See, I'm trying to kind of push how light or dark this is, and I'm feeling it out. I'm not a perfect painter. I'm an okay one at the end of the day, but I'm trying to experiment a little bit to see what I can kind of get away with. I know what I'm looking for, but it might take me 2 to 3 tries to really find that sweet spot. And that's right, that's perfectly normal. And I think being patient with yourself as a painter, sticking it through some of the uglier phases, or setting up for a foundation, right? Like right now, I have it at a good level structurally. Like I'm confident at this stage. Finally, I'm confident at this stage that like, okay, with enough time, I could get this looking exactly how I need it to. So that, with that confidence, that gives me like a little bit of an artistic license that I want to get in there and play a little bit. I want to see, okay, what can I exaggerate? What could I express further? Like, see here, I'm pushing the bloom in it. Totally an optional lighting effect. Not necessary at all. But I'm really trying to throw in, and in a very gentle way, get a little bit of those light particles bouncing around a little bit more. So it's going to pick up a little more color and ultimately simplify some of those details. You can see them right now, right? Behind that structure, like very faint amount of that green, and I'll do a little more back there, but essentially it's just simplifying it with enough that we can kind of see it there, but we're not gonna necessarily ever focus on it over the core structure. And again, I'm just erasing the airbrush to make it uneven and feel a little more wispy. Wispy is good. Wispy is good for clouds, and I'm trying to get that across with maneuvers, right? I try to make it look like a painting's exciting. It's just a routine thing, but yeah, you could do maneuvers with your brush strokes to kind of get that lighting in there. Now, one thing that is still driving me crazy, I am leaving that little tower. I'm not messing with that yet. I will. I know it needs to be done. It's way too high contrast, way too distracting, and some of the edge, the edge work of that cliff that's leading down at that diagonal hasn't been adjusted. But at this stage, I think I had spent like an hour and a half on it, This was done at the Monday night hangout. If you guys join the Discord, which I should be linked below the videos, you guys can come, and I do this stuff usually during either that or a class, and I was touching it up. And essentially on the next day I go back and I'm like, yeah, this looks like crap in here and here, and I go in and add those last little bit details. So sleeping, here's another big tip for the painting. I haven't been counting, but another big tip is like sleep over your decisions. Put it away. If you've been looking at it, I find that if I look at an image even for 2 hours a day like this, I'm going to start to lose sight of some real objective aspects to like how something might be working or not. So I have to put it away. Either, if you're working more than 2 hours a day on something like this, then come back, get a fresh eye, go for a walk, go to the gym, spend time with your family. See, here, I'm really pushing that lighting with a hard light layer. Hard light's one of my favorite type of blending modes because as you can see there, it adds a sense of brilliance to that light. And that little bit of brilliance is really going to get that light to pop. And again, it also is because the light is so, not dull, it is kind of dull, but it's so limited around it. And I'm really just pushing for that light. I could probably, on a longer painting, would go in there and really push a little more subtlety out of those shadows, as that's what I normally do. But, here, I'm just having fun kind of doing some of the opposite things that I usually do, which is a little more of like these higher chroma sections, and then, really just pushing the light that is direct. I usually play more with shadow color. So I'm kind of taking a reverse approach here. All right, so I know I had said I wasn't going to use any photos or something like that, but I'm not going to use a photo. What I'm going to do is use the shape of this tree, and as you can see, I can just use it as a selection, and then with my paintbrush I can kind of cheat at getting really careful little shapes that I don't have to get in there and do. I'm a shortcut based person. I don't have time to do these a lot, so if I could find a little hack like this, use a photo without technically using a photo, I'm going to do it. I'm a cheater. I'll do it like that. Some of you could put me in painting jail if you want. Let me know in the comments, of course, if that counts there. But yeah, just putting the last little bits of details on this. I'd probably add a tree over there, which I'm not going to show. It obviously needs a little love. It's a little rough around the edges, but I got my idea across. I feel like at this stage I communicated what I need to. And that's really wrapping this up. And one of my favorite types of things to do is just get in there and paint. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it up to this point. We're going to take a little brief little intermission here. We're going to go to my last little segment. So thank you those who have made it this far. All right, guys. So this is what we're doing today. Together, coming with me, I'm going to end my school loan journey. I know, not the most exciting thing in the world, but I have worked my ass off for the last 17 years to make this happen, and I have my last balance of $723.38. We're just going to end that today, and I'll be debt-free, at least in the school loan department. I still owe lots of money on cars. I still owe lots of money on the house, but let's just do it. Custom pay. Here it goes. And that's it. It's done. Oh my goodness. I am so happy and relieved about that. It's time to officially party. I'm back with my party hat. I'd go crazier with that. My whole house is asleep. But yeah, it was a lot of hard work. I think in total, it must have been about 76 grand, maybe 70,000 in the US. I'm sure that's a lot more relatable for some of you guys, as the higher educational system is like really designed to put us all into debt, and it's terrifying. I think from what I hear, at least people in Europe have it a little bit better, and it's a lot more forgiving, to say the least. But that, if you break down what I got from that, and that wasn't it. Like I had some financial help from my grandparents. I had some grants and scholarships. The education was a fortune. What I get out of that, 20 years ago when I started, I got basic art education. No basic art education is worth, upwards of like $100,000. Absolutely not. And that is part of the reason I had started this whole YouTube journey 11 years ago. And my goal was to help people avoid getting into a situation like I was, being free of art debt, offering affordable ways to learn art, free demos, things like this, and to show you that you can do it. You just have to work hard. I think overall I learned, that type of debt is extremely serious. And honestly, it lit a fire under my ass when I graduated, and I had to be more serious about my craft and take art as a serious responsibility. And it's taken me a long time to get here where I'm at, where I have a company. I do my own school. I work at other schools. I got big clients like Epic Games. I work for every day, and it's the best life. It really is. And of course, thank you to all of you guys, all the Patreon, all the supporters, and everyone that's been here for these videos. Anyone that watches more than 4 minutes of them and likes or adds a comment, helping the algorithms. I owe you guys a big thanks, and I just wanted to take a moment in this awesome hat to do that today. So I'll catch you guys next time. Do take care.